My name is Jerry Ensminger. I served faithfully in the United States Marine Corps for nearly a quarter of a century. Of my 4 children, who were all born during my military career, my daughter Janie was the only one to have been conceived, carried, or born while we lived aboard Marine Corps Base Camp Lejeune, North Carolina, during the years of the water contamination. When Janie was 6 years old, she was diagnosed with leukemia. She fought a valiant battle against her disease, but she eventually lost the war. She passed away on 24 September 1985 at the age of 9. That is correct. The 30th anniversary of her death was just 5 short, painful days ago. Janie is but one example of the multitude of tragedies suffered by former Camp Lejeune families who were exposed by this negligence. It wasn't until August of 1997 that I became aware of the contaminated tap water aboard Camp Lejeune. The Department of the Navy and the United States Marine Corps did their very best to conceal the truth, but eventually that genie escaped its bottle. At first, the Department of the Navy and Marine Corps reported that the contamination had reached only a few of the base's water supply wells, and they had immediately taken those wells offline. There was absolutely no mention that the contaminants had reached our taps. When that fact was finally revealed, authorities with the Department of the Navy and Marine Corps publicly described the levels of contaminants that we were exposed to as minute, trace, small, or minuscule. Many years later, when the truth was finally revealed, Camp Lejeune's contaminated tap water is now known as the worst and largest tap water contamination incident of a major water system in the history of our nation. I would say that that is a far cry from our leader's description of the contaminant levels as minute, trace, small, or minuscule. Wouldn't you agree? Mr. Chairman, I will now address my years of experiences with the Veterans Administration concerning the Camp Lejeune contamination issue. I would like to preface my detailed comments with this one statement, which I feel encapsulates the VA Camp Lejeune saga. Agents within the VA system have expended more effort, time, and money devising methods to deny Camp Lejeune victims their rightful benefits rather than providing them. During our April 2010 Camp Lejeune Community Assistance Panel meeting, Mr. Brad Floor of the VBA described in great detail the VA claims process which Camp Lejeune veterans needed to follow when submitting a claim for service-connected benefits. A court-recorded transcript is available on ATSDR's website of that meeting. In 2013, the VA changed the rules and the requirements for Camp Lejeune claims. They had created an entire new step in the adjudication process for Camp Lejeune claims only. This step was called subject matter experts, or SMEs, who were selected from existing VA medical staff. These so-called SMEs were neither scientifically or medically qualified to make the judgments or evaluations that their VA handlers were tasking them to make. The fact that the VA has veered out of their lane of providing health care and benefits and into areas of expertise from which they have no business venturing raises some very troubling questions for me. First and foremost, what is the motivation for VA staff in their incessant pursuit in denying veterans their benefits? Most of the VA staff involved in this VA Lejeune debacle are or were retired military medical officers, and their actions exhibit an almost maniacal desire to deny their fellow veterans their benefits. Secondly, we need to determine if a congressionally approved standardized VA claims process exists, which veterans can confidently follow when making a claim. Apparently, the current policy allows the VA to modify the claims process at their whim, without congressional oversight. This allows the VA to create insurmountable obstacles in the claims process for which most veterans don't have the knowledge or the finances to overcome. In layman's terms, this amounts to authorizing a sports team to change the rules at any time they desire, even during a game. How can anyone be successful in such a scenario? They can't. For example, I have witnessed many Camp Lejeune veterans' claims where these so-called VA SMEs completely ignored and even challenged the veterans attending oncologists and other medical specialists. Thirdly, Mr. Chairman, in light of the VA's Camp Lejeune SME fiasco, with their demonstrated desire to rely on outdated science and their refusal to recognize and utilize the most up-to-date scientific studies available, I must personally oppose Bill S-901. In its current form, S-901 would not only be dangerous to the welfare of our veterans and their families, it would create a conflict of interest and a duplication of efforts which other existing governmental agencies are tasked, staffed, and equipped to perform. I would be in favor of a modified S-901, which would mandate one or a combination of these existing agencies to perform the tasks outlined in this bill. In closing, Mr. Chairman, no other military toxic exposure incident in our history has been documented nor studied as thoroughly as Camp Lejeune. Much of the science is already in, and more is coming in future study reports. Many Camp Lejeune veterans and their families have waited, suffered, and yes, some even died, waiting for this scientific evidence. They shouldn't need to wait any longer for the help that they deserve. We were all at Camp Lejeune to serve and protect our nation. None of us ever expected nor deserved to be poisoned, especially here on our home shores. Now, the VA representative you heard earlier brought up this VA app, exposure app that they've got. One of my colleagues just went to that app. The information on the Camp Lejeune page is incorrect. It's outdated science. It says TCE may cause kidney cancer. That app is about like a computer. It's only as good as what you put in it. Thank you.
Without